Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
If Hillary Clinton tweeted out a cartoon video of her with swords killing Donald Trump, what do you think the reaction would be? Right. So today, the House of Representatives is going to try to censure Paul Gosar, whose own family, his own siblings, have put out campaign videos to tell the people of Arizona to vote against their brother because he is mentally unfit, mentally unstable, mentally unable to have a position of power, even one of 435 members of the House of Representatives. And he got elected anyway. And now he is, as you know, he tweeted out a video, and it's not just a video. It's a video, a cartoon video, a anime video. Anime, by the way, just a word for cartoon, okay? But he literally used his congressional staff on congressional time, using their official duties as a member of the House of Representatives to doctor this video, this anime video, in order to put his face on the so-called hero in this cartoon story, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's face on the perceived giant, on the perceived, evildoer in this video, and also Joe Biden as an infiltrator into the world that Paul Gosar in this cartoon was protecting from invasion, from invaders, usurpers, vermin, filth, right? Now, the reason why he is being singled out for censure, which we haven't had since Charlie Rangel used his stationery, his congressional stationery to fundraise. Yeah. The reason why we haven't, seen a censure is because most of the heinous behavior that we see from conservatives, most of the heinous behavior like speaking at a rally and, saying today is the day we kick some ass, right? Pointing toward his workplace, Mo Brooks, right? And all the other lunatic, fringy congressmen, Matt Gaetz, who says, the election was rigged and all that. The reason why it's Gosar, the reason why Gosar's time in the barrel has happened is because he specifically used congressional time, congressional staff, his congressional office to do this threat. That's why. So now that you understand what you're not allowed to do as a member of the Congress, and that is use your official office to do malfeasance or to threaten the life of your colleague in a workplace, and you know that if you did that at work, if you, A, used your time on the clock at work to doctor some video in order to put your face on something that was going to kill somebody you work with, and you did that in your workplace, you'd be fired. But the best that Congress can do is censure him, hold him accountable, and remove him from his committees. And that is what is being debated now in the House of Representatives. And there were some amazing speeches so far this morning talking about this cartoon. And by this cartoon, I mean Paul Gosar. He is a cartoon of a human being. He's one-dimensional. He has said horrible things before. No one has censured him before, even though he has said hideous, ugly, racist things about immigrants and immigration and every other thing, even though he's been helping the big lie live, right? Even though he has been campaigned against by his own family members who know him best and tell you, as Arizona voters, he's unstable. He's a white supremacist. He's a hater. He's a racist. He should never be anywhere near power, let alone be an office holder and swear an oath to the Constitution in a libelous fashion because he has no intention of protecting the Constitution. Only 2 Republicans voted to even have this debate. The rest of the Republican House, including the minority leader, has remained silent when this threat of violence, this particular iteration of a threat of violence. Look, we've had January 6th already, and we've had members of the House speaking at the Save America rally and telling people that this is their revolution and that they need to get, go kick some ass up on Capitol Hill. And that person, Mo Brooks, hasn't been censured, right? He hasn't been censured. And all the other, Andy Biggs and the rest of this crew. They've not been censured. The only reason why Gosar is being censured is because he used his resources as a member of the House to make the threat. Otherwise, we've seen threats against Nancy Pelosi. Oh, Nancy, where are you? We've seen threats against Vice President Mike Pence. Hang Mike Pence. Hang Mike Pence, right? We also saw violence against Steve Scalise. Steve Scalise at a baseball game, he was shot. We also saw, Gabby Giffords get shot in Arizona at a constituent, event in a supermarket parking lot. Why? Because we went through a period of, heightened, threats then, too, with crosshairs on certain, members of the House, crosshairs. This goes back to the Palin era, okay? This goes all back to Obama's a Muslim. He's a Muslim. And what was the 57-state slip? He was talking about Islam and Muslim countries, and he's a Muslim, and he's a witch doctor, and hang him, and ACA, it's a communist. I mean, all of it. And Sarah Palin putting crosshairs on her fundraising material. Listen, this is really out of control now because people actually got hurt. Let's not forget that Gabby Giffords got shot in the face. Don't forget that Steve Scalise was shot at a baseball game. Don't forget that Jackie Spear was shot 5 times in Guyana for trying to, investigate a cult when she was an assistant to a sitting member of the House of Representatives who went down to Guyana to see what the hell was going on down there with this Jim Jones Kool-Aid drinking crowd. And she ended up with 5 bullets in her. And the member that she was, serving as a staffer to, dead. So let's not pretend we don't know what causes violence against members of Congress. Let's not pretend we don't know what Paul Gosar was advocating for. And please do not forget that he used his public office, an office he is elected to by people, the people that he represents, not an office that entitles him to be the CEO of threats against AOC. And that's why he's being censured today, or that's why they're debating whether or not to censure him over the violent video that has been seen by nearly 3 million people. And he just stood up on the floor and he refused to apologize. He compared himself to Alexander Hamilton, to which David Cicilline stood up and said, you, sir, are no Hamilton. He's not sorry. He will do it again. They will all do it again. You have people not saying anything, and silence actually encourages violence and normalizes violence and is an acceptance of violence, as we all know. They're not done. They're not done. And the reason why the Republicans are such cowards, there's an election coming in just a few months. I mean, we're literally a year away from a midterm election. It's November. And next November, there will be a midterm election. And Donald Trump has all the data. Just remember that. It's not him they're afraid of. It's the data.
things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
All right, this was Nancy at the beginning of this debate.
When a member uses his or her national platform to encourage violence, tragically, people listen to those words, and they may act upon them. Words spoken by elected officials weigh a ton. People hear them very differently. As the resolution that the committee is putting forth states, depictions of violence can foment actual violence and jeopardize the safety of elected officials, as witnessed in this chamber on January 6, 2021. It is inconceivable that a member of our community here would wish to repeat the violence of that dark day, that deadly day. As a woman, Speaker of the House, I want to be clear. These threats specifically target a woman of color, which is part, as the resolution states, a global phenomenon meant to silence women and discourage them for seeking positions of authority and participating in public life. Again, this is about workplace harassment and violence against women. Yet, the member has never apologized for his actions. It's a cartoon, relax, he said. Really? A cartoon? Relax? And he wrote to supporters, his hyperventilating and shrill accusations that this cartoon is dangerous are laughable or intentionally hyperbolic. I'm entitled to speak to the people and to do so in a manner that is engaging, he said. Really? Is it engaging to depict killing a colleague or anyone? It's not just about members of Congress. Anyone, threatening anyone. Disguising death threats against a member of Congress and a president of the United States in an animated video does not make those death threats any less real or less serious. And indeed, conveying them this way makes them potentially more dangerous by normalizing violence.
Gosar is a white supremacist. He's a white nationalist. He has appeared at white nationalist conferences. He has said the most heinous racist things about immigrants. This video that he, doctored to put his face on the cartoon hero, and the reason he chose Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as the enemy is because Paul Gosar sees her that way. Paul Gosar is a white supremacist, and he selected a Puerto Rican woman as the enemy that he was going to slay in this cartoon. And the reason why he did it this way is so he could appeal to the younger, more volatile, better armed base of the Republican, or it's not even Republican, of the Trump party, okay? That's why he did this. And 3 million people did view it. And he didn't want to take it down. And the leadership in the House on his side of the aisle remains silent. Here's what Kevin McCarthy actually said today about censuring Paul Gosar, who used his official office as an elected member of the House of Representatives to doctor and create and disseminate on his official representative, his congressional account on Instagram and Twitter. This is what he said.
Democrats want to change the rules but refuse to apply them to their own caucus. I listened to the Speaker talk about the highest standards. Madam Speaker, when a Democratic chairwoman flew to Minneapolis and told an angry crowd during a trial to stay on the streets, get more active, get more confrontational, we've got to make sure they know we mean business. That high standard, the Democrats refused to take action. The trial judge actually singled her out on her comments on an ongoing basis, which he said could become an issue on appeal. But this wasn't the first time. No. This is 3 times. At a rally in Los Angeles, that same chairwoman, she told a mob, if you see anyone from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them that they're not welcome anymore, anywhere. She later defended that comment in another speech in L.A., saying, the same chairwoman of the high standards, I did not threaten Trump, constituents, and supporters. I do that all the time. But I didn't do it that time. This side of the aisle didn't ask that chairwoman to lose her committee. We simply asked for an apology.
Okay. Telling people to form a crowd, that's freedom of assembly. And telling people, you know, to be loud, that's freedom of speech. Depicting the killing, the violence of a of a colleague in the House, using your House office to create that doctored video and posting it on your official account in order to gin up violence against the President of the United States and AOC, who was selected because she, in his eyes, is an illegitimate American, right? Is not the same thing. These are bizarre analogies, and what he's talking about is Maxine Waters. And Maxine Waters is allowed to tell people to get active. You know, she just is. She's allowed to tell people to, you know, confront their legislators with their grievances. She's allowed to tell people to create a crowd. It's freedom of assembly, okay? These people are always looking for a physical confrontation. January 6th was a physical confrontation. A physical confrontation ensued when they shot Gabby Giffords in the face, okay? And they are looking, the Republican, you know, dweebs, the Republican Mo Brookses, the Andy Biggs, the Gosars, who are still perpetuating a lie, a big, giant lie, in order to disenfranchise voters in this country, in order to get laws changed in this country so that legislators can choose the winner of our free and fair elections. So that if legislators in the states don't like the result of an election, they can flip it, they can change it. This is what they're doing. And there is absolutely no comparison to protest or protesting. The violence perpetrated against unarmed people in this country with Paul Gosar, who is threatened by no one, using his congressional office and his official accounts on social media to activate a base that has clearly demonstrated that it wants a reason and it will get violent. It wants a reason. You activate us and we will do it. You tell us who, you tell us when, you tell us where, and we will show up and we will do it. Now, Steve Bannon is on his show doing the same damn thing. All of a sudden, he's the martyr for Al-Qaeda. Yeah, he's the martyr. And he's threatening his revenge on his podcast.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Okay, this is just from a few minutes ago. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez speaking about why Paul Gosar must be censured.
I've been serving in this body just under 3 years. Not 3 years, enormous amount has happened. But in response to the Republican leader's remarks when he says that this action is unprecedented, what I believe is unprecedented is for a member of House leadership of either party to be unable to condemn incitement of violence against a member of this body. It is sad. It is a sad day in which a member who leads a political party in the United States of America cannot bring themselves to say that issuing a depiction of murdering a member of Congress is wrong. and instead decides to venture off into a tangent about gas prices and inflation. What is so hard? What is so hard about saying that this is wrong? This is not about me. This is not about Representative Gosar, but this is about what we are willing to accept.
That's the issue. Are you willing to accept working in a hostile work environment where your colleagues are socially tweeting or Instagramming and communicating with a base of Americans who want to have an excuse to do violent things to especially women in the Congress of the Democratic persuasion of color? Why can't the leader of the Republican Party in the House say that that is not acceptable? Why can't he say that? Because Donald Trump has the data on every one of their voters. That's why. They're not afraid of Donald Trump. They're afraid of Donald Trump's operation. They're afraid of all the psychological profiling that's been sucked out of social media and given to Donald Trump's campaign. They know that Donald Trump can target any one of their voters at will, precisely, with pinpoint accuracy and precision, and that they can talk that person because they have a psychological profile on that person. They can talk to that person and they can get that person to not vote for even a Republican member of the House or a Republican senator. This is really scary because of the data. And that is why Paul Gosar chose social media as his dissemination point. The heinous part is that he used his official office and his official accounts to threaten her life and the life of Joe Biden. All right, here's Paul Gosar trying to, I won't even say defend himself. He doesn't think he needs defending. Okay, this is him saying, I didn't mean to hurt anybody. I was just having fun.
I rise today to address and reject the mischaracterization, accusations from many in this body that the cartoon from my office is dangerous or threatening. It was not. And I reject the false narrative categorically. I do not espouse violence towards anyone. I never have. It was not my purpose to make anyone upset. I voluntarily took the cartoon down, not because it was itself a threat, but because some thought it was. Out of compassion for those who generally felt offense, I self-censored. Last week, my staff posted a video depicting a policy battle regarding amnesty for tens of millions of illegal aliens. This is an enemy that speaks to young voters who are too often overlooked. Even Twitter, the left's mouthpiece, did not remove the cartoon, noting it was in the public's interest for it to remain. The cartoon directly contributes to the understanding and the discussion of the real-life battle resulting from this administration's open border policy.
Oh, my God.
This body is considering passage of Mr. Biden's reckless, socialist, Marxist $4.9 trillion spending bill that provides $100 billion for amnesty to tens of millions of illegal aliens already in this country. This is what the left doesn't want the American people to know. Our country is suffering from the plague of illegal immigration. I don't stop pointing this out, nor will I.
So he has been and is aligned with this whole replacement theory crowd, the white supremacist crowd, the Unite the Right crowd, where they say Jews will not replace us and this one won't replace us, and, you know, appealing to the crowd of old, angry white men who are full of resentment for anybody that isn't an old, angry white man, okay? We do not have a policy of open borders. As you know, Joe Biden has deported more people, and the left was upset because he was using Title 42 in the middle of a pandemic to deny people due process as they entered into this country illegally. Okay, they're allowed to make claims of asylum normally, but he used the same Trump rule, saying it's a pandemic, you can't come in, you're going back, there will be no hearing. And the left was really upset because Joe Biden was deporting people faster than Obama deported people. He just makes this crap up because it makes him seem as if he cares about some issue. He doesn't care about some issue. He's involved with the America First caucus. They say Anglo-Saxon political traditions are fading away and they're being replaced in this country by mass immigration. And it negatively affects, and these are his words, the unique identity of this country. The unique identity of this country, by the way, is immigrants. That's what makes America unique. Immigrants from everywhere. From all over the world, from Europe, from Italy, from Ireland, from England, from South Africa, from North Africa, from East Africa, from West Africa, from Central America, from South America, from Argentina, all the way down to the tip of Ushuaia. I mean, it so enrages him that he literally said out loud right there that he produced this cartoon to appeal to younger Americans, right? So that they would know they have an enemy, and the enemy is Joe Biden's open borders policy, which doesn't exist any more than CRT, which is a WTF moment when you realize CRT does not exist and they're against it. They're against a lot of things that aren't happening. And that makes them worthy of censure, especially if they're going to incite violence in order to prevent something that's not happening.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
We're here today because a sitting member thought it was okay to post a deranged animated video of himself killing a fellow member of this House and also attacking the President of the United States. That video has been seen by 3 million people. It was up for over 2 days before it was taken down. Inciting violence begets violence. Congressman Ocasio-Cortez has become the go-to subject of the radical right to stir up their base, as too often is the case for women of color. It is disgusting and profoundly unacceptable. Tragically, the minority leader has not condemned the video. For 8 days, he said nothing. Silence speaks volumes.
Silence is also a way of saying violence is okay. It's a way of normalizing violence. It's a way of accepting violence as a tactic in order to keep power. That is why Kevin McCarthy says nothing. That is why Chip Roy stands up there and says, oh, but, you know, these people are elected. They get to do whatever they want or whatever. You know, this is all because they are terrified of losing their little bit of power that they have as one of 435 House members. This is what this is about. And they know that Donald Trump has all kinds of data to target their voters to make them vote for or against them, whether they are Republican or Democrat or independents or any other thing. So that's what's going on. And AOC has become the poster girl for everything the base, everything the Trumpists, everything the Trump pansies despise, everything from the color of her skin to her gender. They're a bunch of misogynists, as you know. There are incels, as you know, and they also are racist. And I mean truly hateful racists who believe that AOC who came here from a commonwealth that is part of the United States, came here to invade this country and take away their majority. That is so, it's who they are. It's what they've become, and it's what this party in its current iteration tolerates from its members. And we've already seen the violence. Oh, by the way, Jacob Chansley, you know him as the QAnon shaman. He got sentenced today. They gave him three and a half years in prison for his role in the Capitol riot. 3.5 years. And he was very apologetic, I have to say. He blamed himself. He gave a very sprawling speech today. He quoted Clarence Thomas. He quoted the Shawshank Redemption. He compared, wanting to live to Jesus Christ. He compared, the way that he will proceed with Gandhi's, peace-loving nature. I mean, he said, quote, "I was in solitary confinement because of me, because of my decision. I broke the law. I should do what Gandhi would do and take responsibility. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what men of honor do. I promise I will never be jailed again." And the judge actually responded. It was Judge Royce Lamberth. He said, "I think your remarks are the most remarkable I've ever heard in 34 years. But what you did was as horrific as you now concede." Now, remember, Jacob Chansley was very disappointed because he wanted a pardon from Donald Trump and didn't get one. And then he went on a hunger strike because he wanted to have organic food served to him in the prison. And then he told 60 Minutes to come and interview him in jail without permission from the court. And so he got sentenced today to 41 months, which is about 3 years and 4 months. That was the last round of violence, okay? And we just saw another guy from New York. I guess he was a former MMA fighter or some such guy who beat a police officer, punched him square in the face. He got 44 months in prison. So we're starting to see the most heinous of the offenders out of the 600 plus. I don't even want to give a number. 600 plus offenders. 600 plus. Remember when the Fox News people were sitting there saying, "Oh, it was a handful of people, and it wasn't a whole lot of people, and this is ridiculous, and blah blah blah, and this and that," and then oh no, and it wasn't even us. It was Antifa. It was Antifa. They were dressed like us. They were wearing red hats to pass themselves off as us. Remember that? And I mean, every excuse in the book that you could think to excuse this unbelievable coup, this unbelievable insurrection, this violent act against members of the House of Representatives and, the Vice President of the United States, anything at all to distract from what really happened, to distract from the fact that you had a rally the night before with members of Congress telling people to kick some ass. You had the President of the United States at that rally telling them, "Let's go up to the Capitol and I'll be there with you," saying this to people wearing tactical gear, saying this to people with walkie-talkies, saying this to and you just had a guy brought up on a weapons charge for having a car full of assorted guns and Molotov cocktails. He just got sentenced too. I think they gave him 3 years. I mean, what is wrong with the Republican Party? What is wrong with them? That they would rather cling to their little bit of power and their $174,000 salary than they would see a democracy hold violent people accountable for their violent activities and hold up little punks in the street as being heroic for shooting people, unarmed people, and just roll themselves around with the most heinous people in the world, with the ugliest of people, with the worst offenders against our democracy, and say, these are the people that, Steve Bannon, we're going to prop him up too. We're all about Steve Bannon. Roger Stone, we're all about him too. Donald Trump, we're all about, Oh, have you seen the Chris Christie rehabilitation tour that's going on? This is unconscionable. And that the corporate media keeps giving him a place to sit his behind down and to talk about, oh, I was sick to my stomach when I saw what Trump did, after the election was decided and he, the insurrection he caused and the screaming at people to get violent. Oh, I was sick to my stomach. Meanwhile, Chris Christie heard Donald Trump the whole lead up to the violence prior to the election. He heard Donald Trump at every stump speech, at every rally, at every campaign event, not only, telling people to get violent and punch this guy in the face and take him out of here and, whatever, go home to mommy and I'll get this guy's legal fees and all that. But also in the run-up to the election saying, if I don't win, it's because it's rigged. If I lose, it's because it's rigged. The only reason I would lose is because it's rigged. And Chris Christie sat on the TV repeatedly, on any TV that he could get his face on, and he said, I know Donald Trump. You can trust my judgment. We're old friends. Donald Trump, I can tell you, will peacefully transfer power if he loses. He will. Because that's who he is. He's not some schmuck. He's not going to, gum up the works. He doesn't want to be that guy. Really. And now they're doing entire specials on Chris Christie on the CNN. I sit there and I said, why are we talking to Chris Christie? That was Donald Trump's bitch. You remember when Chris Christie first, surrendered to Donald Trump's candidacy and he looked like he was caught in a freaking hostage video? You remember that? And he went along with all of this. Now, all of a sudden, guess what? He wrote a book. And you know what the book is about? The book is about repairing the Republican Party's reputation as being liars and conspiracy theorists. He's outraged, I tell you, outraged that the Republican Party has now post-election, become a party of conspiracy theorists like Michael Flynn and QAnon. And like Donald Trump wasn't, talking to audience members who were holding up the giant Q. And when he was asked about QAnon at a sit-down during the campaign, he said, I don't know anything about them. I have no idea what they are. And Michael Flynn, obviously his national security advisor, who had to resign after 24 days for being a lying sack of criminal crap, is making pledges of allegiance to this conspiracy theory group. And Chris Christie is saying, oh, now, post-election, Trump has become stomach churning. Post-election, I'm sickened by him. Get out of here.
Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Flashback.
If it doesn't go the president's way, you know him pretty well, is he prepared to accept defeat?
Yes. Yeah, I think he is. And I think a lot of the stuff you heard him saying at rallies indicate that. He understands where he is in this race. I think as with most candidates, as you get to the end here, and I think Don is right, I think the president's campaign is surging now. I think he's comfortable. I think he's a lot happier than he's been in a long time. You see that in these rallies that he's doing. This is his sweet spot. But he also is not going to be a guy who's going to sit there and not leave the White House. Okay,
really?
He will abide by the decision of the voters. I'm confident of that. And listen, there will be, no matter what happens here, there's going to be a lot of tumult. All right, because I think it's going to be a close race Tuesday night. I do not think this is going to be a blowout. I think this is going to be a very close race. You don't think we're going to know
Tuesday night, do you?
I do not think we're going to know on Tuesday night, particularly because of Pennsylvania. I mean, with Pennsylvania having the voting methods they have, extending the period, the court, by 3 days to be able to accept ballots that are postmarked by Election Day, I think it's going to be close enough that those 3 days are going to matter.
And of course they did matter because the Pennsylvania legislature changed the rules and said that if a ballot is postmarked by Election Day, it has 3 days to get there. And the reason they had to do that is because the Postal Service slowed it down. Oh, and for those of you who are following the story of the United States Postal Service, Biden might have a chance coming up here soon to save the Postal Service from Louis DeJoy smashing it to smithereens, because the problem is Joe Biden, the president of the United States, cannot directly fire the head of the United States Postal Service. He cannot directly fire Louis DeJoy. That is a function of the chairman and the board members of the United States Postal Service. Now, the early next month, the chairman of the United States Postal Service, who is a Democrat but was nominated and confirmed by Donald Trump's people. Okay, his term is going to expire. His name is Bloom. Bloom is a guy who has shuttled, you talk about the revolving door, in and out of, like investment firms and government work, investment firms and government work, investment firms and government work. And his previous job was at a investment firm called Lazard. Lazard is a company that made humongous profits from investing in the privatization of England's Royal Mail system. Bloom was selected by Donald Trump, not because he was a Democrat or a Republican, he is a Democrat, but he was selected by Donald Trump because he had experience in privatization of a giant postal service, a government postal service. Well, his term is expiring on December 8th. He is a Trump appointee. He is serving out the remainder of a 7-year term that was left vacant. And if Biden is able to nominate and get confirmed a new chairman, then that person and the board could get rid of Louis DeJoy, and not a moment, before. And that's the issue at play with the Postal Service. But I digress. So Chris Christie is sitting there saying, trust my judgment. I know Donald Trump. Donald Trump and I, we could talk about anything. I could tell him anything I want. And, you could see from his rallies, this was on November 2nd, before the election. You could see from his rallies, he feels he's in his sweet spot. He feels good. He's encouraged. And if he should lose, he won't cause any contretemps in the peaceful transfer of power. He's not going to be that guy. And that wasn't the only time Chris Christie ever said it, okay? Chris Christie said it again on another show on the same day.
I get on a campaign trail, you never want to hypothesize about losing, but you know this guy well. Do you believe he would follow critical conventions in the United States and have a peaceful transition of power for those months between this election result and the next inauguration?
There's no question in my mind that President Trump will participate in a peaceful transition of power if he does not win tomorrow night. And I believe that Vice President Biden will participate in making sure that the Democratic Party accepts the results of the election tomorrow night if President Trump is reelected. They're both responsible men. They both will act in concert with what our traditions are in this country. And quite frankly, members of the Republican Party and Democratic Party, leaders like myself and others, will make sure that happens.
Trust my judgment. Trust me. I know this man. And I will make sure there's a peaceful transfer of power. I will make sure. Now he writes a book. And so he's on a book tour, which is the Chris Christie Rehabilitation Tour, ahead of his attempt to run for president or senator. I don't know. And the book is about conspiracy theories and the lying. Yeah. Well, I mean, he was featured on a CNN special called Being Chris Christie. Seriously.
Take me back to election night 2020. You're watching the then president, and he starts talking, and you do what?
I felt absolutely sick to my stomach, physically sick to my stomach, watching him stand behind the seal of the President of the United States in the East Room of the White House, saying something that I knew at that moment he couldn't prove was true. but he was saying it as if it was an absolute fact.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
You cannot, as President of the United States, stand up there and say that the election was stolen to the American people as your first statement after the results are coming in, unless you have absolute concrete proof. And that's the prosecutor in me, I guess. I felt like it was the obligation of even someone who had been a supporter of his, had voted for him earlier that day, to say what the truth was. And the truth was that at that moment, there was no evidence that the election was being stolen. And in fact, we're now, nearly a year later, and there still isn't any evidence that the election was stolen.
And he's still saying it.
Yes.
Chris Christie is now the Republican Party's truth teller and the debunker of all things conspiratorial. Yes. This is Donald Trump's bitch, okay? This is who Chris Christie is. This is who Chris Christie was. Chris Christie saw all the rallies we saw, never once condemned Donald Trump's incitement of violence or incitement to violence or any of the things. He saw the night before the election. He saw the Save America rally. He saw Andy Biggs. He saw Mo Brooks. He saw Paul Gosar. He saw a backbencher from the Department of Justice, John Eastman, at that rally. We all did. We all did. Everybody knows what Donald Trump did the night before January 6th. Chris Christie said nothing about nothing. Nothing about nothing. And you know who called him out? The former Republican, Nicole Wallace. She actually said to him, you wrote a freaking book. Your book is about lies and conspiracy theories, and you never once mention Fox News. Now, if you run for office ever again, how are you going to treat Fox News? You ignore it in your book. You absolutely, heard everything we heard in the run-up to the election. We heard Donald Trump say multiple times that the only way he could lose is if the election is rigged. You heard Fox News say it. Tucker Carlson is sitting on there promoting fascism and white supremacy. And you know what Chris Christie said? I don't watch Tucker Carlson. I don't watch that. I don't watch it. So I didn't write about it because I didn't Are you kidding me? You want to be the leader of the free world, or you want to be elected to an office of power, an office of, respect, an office of honor, and you have no idea the kind of bile that's being spewed over there by the lunatic fringe? He writes a book about conspiracy theories and lying and leaves out America's biggest giant cable news network of lies. He leaves it out. He leaves out the white supremacists and the fascism that they promote, the vax lies, the conspiracy theories about vaccines.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
They're voting right now on the censure of Paul Gosar. Looks like, the two usual Republican suspects have voted to censure Gosar, right? So that'd be Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. They voted yes to censure him. Every other Republican voted nay. It's perfectly fine to incite violence as long as it's a cartoon. And one Republican from Ohio actually voted present. There's a decisive person. Probably doesn't even know what he wants for dinner. All right, Brian in Illinois.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Brian.
The Republicans speaking at the Gosar hearing want us to believe it's just a cartoon, like you just said, and not a call to action. But historically, there have been many cartoons that became calls to action, especially during World War II, and most recently the Charlie Hebdo paper.
Yep, that's right.
The Danish Charlie Hebdo paper that showed a cartoon of Muhammad that resulted in 3 terrorist attacks against the paper.
Yeah, and they killed 12 people, including the 2 that drew the cartoon.
Yep, so cartoons aren't what the Republicans want us to believe.
No, I mean, look, Paul Gosar is a cartoon. The idea that he violated his office, this is an ethics action, okay? This is the ethics committee that is voting to censure him on the full floor of the House. That's what this is. And the reason why it's a violation of the House ethics is because he used his official office staff that we pay with our tax dollars, and he used his official office and his official Instagram account and Twitter account, which is verified as being his official, to disseminate these threats against AOC and Joe Biden because he's a white supremacist. And he even said in his non-apology that he was trying to appeal to younger voters and let them know that they had an enemy. And their enemy is apparently Puerto Rican girls from the Bronx. I have no idea. But you're right. I mean, cartoons, they have depicted, people as filth and vermin through World War II and the Charlie Hebdo siege, which killed 12 people at the paper, including the 2 that drew the comic, the cartoon, and also, a police officer and others in the big, this was something Al-Qaeda did. And Al-Qaeda, when you translate that from the Arabic into the English, means the base. And that's what's happening here in this country. We have a base. We have a base that is becoming the base, that is becoming the Qaeda base. And they are willing and ready and have used violence in furtherance of their white supremacist agenda. And it's a sad truth, but it's true. Department of Homeland Security agrees. The biggest threat America faces is not from foreign terrorists, it's from domestic terrorists. The biggest threat America faces is not from foreign hate groups, it's from American hate groups. It's from homegrown hate groups. Now we're watching these 2 trials with both of them regarding vigilantism. We had a law that passed in Texas, literally deputizing people to be vigilantes with $10,000 bounties being the reward for hunting down and bringing to court any person who counsels speech, who counsels a woman who is looking for healthcare information about how to terminate a pregnancy safely. That person could be turned in and a $10,000 bounty would be awarded to the vigilante that actually gets their case to court. I mean, this is sick. And now we've got 2 vigilante cases. We have the Rittenhouse case, which is a 17-year-old vigilante armed to the teeth. And we have the Ahmaud Arbery case, which is 3 vigilantes in Satilla Shores, which is also, suburb of Brunswick, Georgia. And I'm telling you, this is a moment where everybody needs to pay attention to what juries think is legal and what juries say is illegal still in this country. And we have to just hope and pray that these juries find that vigilantism is not acceptable and hasn't been since the end of the slave patrols. Now, the slave patrols is what made vigilantism what it is. Slave patrols actually made it an obligation for free black men, free black men and Northerners to report and to turn in other people's slaves, property of Southern slaveholders. You were obliged as a white Northerner, you were obliged as a free black man to turn in a slave who wasn't given their freedom. Yeah, you had to if you came across one. And then, you had the Klan, which, under the theory of citizens arrest, right? You had the Klan literally rounding people up. You had the Klan intimidating people and, harassing people and doing violence against people's property and their households and their families, right? And this is what the Arbery trial is about in Georgia. This is exactly the topic is a citizen's arrest against a black man that they assumed was committing a crime. Now, you can't assume somebody is committing a crime and kill them. I'm sorry, but, even under the citizen's arrest theory, you can't do that unless you've witnessed somebody committing a crime. So, we're at this really crazy moment. Oh, and I have to tell you this about the Rittenhouse trial. So, here's what could happen. You know, the jury's in day 2 of their deliberations in the Rittenhouse trial, the 17-year-old kid, right, who ended up killing 2 unarmed people and wounding a third who had a pistol but didn't point it at him. Kyle Rittenhouse has something, his defense has something still in their back pocket. You know what that is? During the trial, the defense made a motion to declare a mistrial with prejudice. Those words have very strict legal meanings. A mistrial with prejudice means that the defendant can never be tried again and is free to go. A mistrial with prejudice means that the defendant is free to go as a result of misbehavior at the trial that was so egregious that he could never possibly get another fair trial. So he's free to go without the possibility of ever being retried on those crimes. Now, the judge, when he was asked by the defense to declare this a mistrial with prejudice because they believe that the prosecution had committed an egregious crime against Kyle Rittenhouse, when they asked him, why did you keep silent after you killed these men? And also they believe that the prosecution erred to the nth degree when the prosecution thought the door was open to asking Kyle Rittenhouse about a time when he wished he was armed so that he could shoot shoplifters, which the judge had ruled was, not going to be brought up in the trial. But the prosecution felt that the door was open to that line of questioning, so they went for it. Okay, so the judge hasn't ruled on this mistrial with prejudice issue, and he's got it in his back pocket. Now, if Kyle Rittenhouse is convicted, the judge is going to have to rule on that motion.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. Okay, here's the fun part. This is the fun part, okay? So the House passed the resolution to censure Paul Gosar, the only 2 Republicans that voted to censure him for his incitement of violence against AOC and Joe Biden were Kinzinger and Cheney. Okay, as usual. But now here comes the fun part about a censure. When the vote passes to censure a member of the House, then that member has to present themselves in the well of the House. They have to be in the well of the House for the public reading of the censure resolution. So Nancy Pelosi just announced that the public reading of the censure resolution shall take place and that Paul Gosar should report to the well of the House. I am waiting for him to report to the well of the House. Let me listen for a brief moment with you and see where we are. Hang on.
They're normal people and they love their country and they love their neighbor. But when you get a platform, Mr. Trump had the largest platform in the world. He still has quite a large one. You start to realize, if you have a brain, that there are some fringe people out there, tiny percent, tiny fraction. But you need to really be careful of what you do and say, this is why the House has all these rules. The distinguished gentleman from Pennsylvania, because there was a time when
Preston
Paul, Brooks of South Carolina, Congressman,
my buddy
beat
Paul
Charles Sumner in Tacoma
Paul
on the Senate floor. And so we set up all these rules. And when you have a platform like...
Okay, when Paul is done, we will put the sound back up. Poor Paul Begala. But they are doing something. The Republican side is doing something, and I don't know what they're doing. But we're awaiting Paul goes. Now, the reason why they do this is to try to give you a sense of shame. This is not a criminal offense. This wasn't a criminal trial. It will never be a criminal trial. This is an ethics violation. And this is something that is a sort of a civil proceeding, but there's no monetary, penalty to the penalty for being censured is you have to go to the well of the House and be publicly shamed. I guess these are the remnants of the witch trials. I don't know, except there's no punishment. There's no punishment except shame. To shame somebody. Now, we haven't seen this happen in 10 years. Like I said, the last person that was ever publicly censured like this was, what's his name? Charlie Rangel. And Charlie Rangel's big crime was he used a congressional letterhead, piece of his own congressional office's stationery, to fundraise. And you can't do that. So it was an ethics violation, and he was shamed in the well of the House while they read publicly the resolution. And that's what's going to happen in the House, but I don't know when. But I have an eye on it. So Asani in Michigan. Hi.
Hi, Randy.
Hey.
Hey, I'm sorry, I'm on the school bus right now. The guy was saying the noise on the background. I'm like, well, I cannot stop it, but I have to listen to this. I was dropping my last group of kids. Okay, first of all, I want to say that, I'm still listening. I'm still here.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you. I'm on Twitter, too, looking for those haters who want to talk stuff about you, and I just reply to them. That's what I do,
Thanks.
All the time.
Thanks.
Randy,
Yeah.
Randy, I think you should write a book. Because, this Trump era, I don't want my kids to learn it from somebody else but you. Real talk. You should write a book. That way my kids can learn the truth. And also, I want to say thank you for making us look smart out there. I have a lot of friends here. No, real talk. I have a lot of friends in Michigan. Some of the people who I work, they think I am so smart.
Oh.
Well,
you
when we talk politics, when we talk politics, I give them the stuff that I get from you. Like, man, you know what? Asan is very smart. Thank you for making me look good.
Thank you, Asani. You make me
and
look
also
good.
the people in the chat room, you are all smart, all of them. I don't want to name them because I don't want to name nobody upset, but all of you guys, keep up the good work, and thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
Much
You're
love.
welcome. Thank you. Much love to you. All right, Gary in Fort Lauderdale.
Wow, that was a really beautiful compliment you just got.
He's a nice man. I've actually exchanged photographs with him, or he did with me. I've seen his family. He's from Senegal. He has a little house in Senegal. He also lives in Michigan. He maintains a little place in Senegal, takes his kids there to teach them about their heritage and history. He's a really fine human being.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, he is.
Well, here's what this very average human being is learning from watching TV today, okay?
Okay.
That I can ignore the law.
Yes.
And ignore a subpoena and not face any consequences. I can hunt down, I can kill my fellow Americans, most likely get away with it. That you can threaten to kill a sitting member of the Congress and get away with it. And that you can organize an insurrection against the United States and definitely get away with it.
And also, you can be against black pastors in public and still have a law license. I mean, some of the stuff that we've seen over the last week has really been hair-raising. You're right. But, I sit there and I listen to Bannon. He goes right back to his podcast, goes right back to inciting violence, goes right back to threatening people,
making money.
Making money, fundraising, becoming a martyr. They're all such victims. All these people that
That's another thing, Randy. Gosar is going to wear this like a badge of honor.
I think the people of Arizona have pretty much had it with him. I really do. I think even his district understands that he is deranged, that he is bad for the Republican Party, that, having these fringe characters is, hurting them in elections. They're losing the suburbs. They're losing women. They're losing family votes. I don't think that, people like that are going to really make it in the long run.
I hope you're right.
I know. That's
This
me.
is as low as I've ever seen it.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly. You're right. It is. It's definitely, we're at a critical moment where we have to choose the direction because we're at a crossroads. Let's put it that way, right? And we could go down the violent, crazy road and soothe the desires of about 10% of 30% of America, right? Which is about 3 million people. That's kind of what we're talking about here. That's like the total number of very, very, violent, hateful, white supremacist aligned Trumpists, right? It's about 3 million, best I can deduce. But if we see them unleashed, well, then one day we'll see 3 million Rittenhouse trials. We'll see 3 million trials of in Brunswick, Georgia. You'll see 3 million acts of incredible violence if they're unleashed. That's the problem. The problem isn't that they're the majority. The problem isn't that they're a close majority. The problem isn't that there's anything even, near the numbers of decent people in this country. That is not the issue. It's not anything that I believe is true. It's not anything that any polling says is true. It's not anything that the voting habits of Americans show is true. What the polling shows and what the activities show and what the Department of Homeland Security's reports show and what the percentages of people who believe in this craziness show is that there are about 3 million people in this country who are down with that program. And the only reason why it's terrifying is because that is 3 million people with access to an enormous amount of firepower. That's why. That's why. But it's also why the Republicans, are afraid of their base.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
The House will be in order. Will Representative Gosar present himself in the well? By its adoption of House Resolution 789, the House has resolved that Representative Paul Gosar of Arizona be censured, that Representative Paul Gosar forthwith present himself in the well of the House for the pronouncement of censure, that Representative Paul Gosar be censured with the public reading of this resolution by the Speaker, and that Representative Paul Gosar be and is hereby removed from the Committee on Natural Resources and the Committee on Oversight and Reform.
I guess that was it. I thought she was supposed to read the resolution to him. Okay, well, he got removed from his committee is what happened there. Okay, that's good. That's done. Now they spent all morning. Now do voting rights. Okay. Now do voting rights. Jerry in Baltimore.
Hey, Randi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
This is worse than the episodes of House of Cards. Remember that on Netflix?
Yeah.
I mean, that president, well, granted, he got away with murder, but, he wasn't in cahoots with his own party. I mean,
well, you did have 5 people die in this insurrection. That fact seems to just evade everybody's consciousness. I mean, the only death that matters to them is Ashley Babbitt, but she's also dead because of Donald Trump. She's dead because of Donald Trump's conspiracy theories. She's dead because Donald Trump lied and lied some more. So, but 5 people did die as a result of that insurrection. So, so far Trump has gotten away with murder too.
Yeah, well, all I can say is Hollywood couldn't have come up with this script because they would have said, that's nuts. Nobody would believe it.
I don't know. I think there'll be, plenty of Hollywood movies about Donald Trump. I just feel it. Vince in Virginia.
Hey, Randi.
Hi.
I'm thinking we could almost force Bannon and the Republican Party by saying Bannon is pleading executive privilege because he's tacitly admitting that he spoke to Trump about January 6th. I mean, isn't that kind of what he's saying? They want to bring him before the committee to talk about January 6th. He says, no, I can't do that because I have to plead executive privilege because I spoke to Trump about it.
No, so here Bannon is saying that he doesn't hold the privilege. The person who holds executive privilege needs to show up with him so that if the committee asks him about anything that happened way back in the day in 2017, which they won't, okay, when he was part of the administration, which he hasn't been for 5 years, then he needs the holder of executive privilege to invoke the privilege for him. Otherwise, he won't show up. That is his case. That is what he's pleading. That is what he's saying.
So we can't make the legal argument saying that this is pertaining only to January 6th. We're not going to ask any questions about your time in the White House.
Right. They absolutely could do that.
They could do that, right?
Yes.
And I think the only reason why he's continuing to plead executive privilege is because, even if this is true or not, you could put it in the hemisphere out there in the politosphere and say because he's tacitly admitting that he was speaking to Donald Trump just before January 6th. That's the only reason, because this is not pertaining to anything before January 6th.
It doesn't matter. He's still in contempt of Congress, and here's why. If he believes that somebody, not Biden, possesses executive privilege, which isn't true, he still has to show up and say that to the committee. He still has to show up and tell the select committee, I will not answer any question that has anything to do with, an executive, a president of this country being able to exert their privilege over a privileged conversation. And the committee would then say to him, we're just going to ask you what your name is, and we're going to ask you about crap that you said on your podcast. Because anything you said on your podcast, anything you said after 2017 when you were no longer in the administration is not protected under any privilege, period. And so you have an obligation to show up. And because some of the questions we're going to ask you are like, what is your name? That's not protected. What did you say on your podcast on this day? We're going to play you a clip of your podcast. What did you mean by this? That's not protected by privilege. And if he was on his podcast and he was divulging any information that could possibly be protected information because Donald Trump was still the president when he was doing his podcast, then by saying it on his podcast, he waived executive. Yes,
exactly. And you know how the right muddies the political information by coming up with these unique angles that the Dems just never seem to come up with. I think this is that angle, because you're saying, look, the only reason why you're trying to plead this is because the conversation of January 6th, somehow you shared those with President Trump.
Here's the problem for Bannon, and he would be better off exerting a different privilege, like his Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself, because he sat on his show over and over and over again, beginning on January 2nd, and started telling his audience, this is the call to action. This is what you're waiting for. Tomorrow's going to go down. Strap in. It's not going to go down the way you think it's going to go down, but all hell is going to break loose. Now, either he's a clairvoyant, he makes like Dionne Warwick's network look stupid, and he's really got the gift, or he
Alex Jones, all of them were saying this crazy stuff.
That's right.
All was coming, and just between you and I, Randy. Do you think he spoke to Donald Trump before January 6th?
Yes.
And that's why he's trying to plead executive privilege.
But that's not privileged. The fact
I know,
right?
But
so,
he's implementing him. He's making him. He's showing that he's guilty of doing that, and that Trump is guilty of doing it as well. And I think we need to hammer that home.
I'll just have you know that today he waived his arraignment. He doesn't need one. He's already entered his plea, and it's not guilty.
These guys are lunatics. They're obvious racist, race peddling. They talk about Jesse Jackson race peddling. Gosh, man, and they're doing this over in Russia, and it's like this whole statist.
It's fascism, is what it's fascism. It really is, and the corporate fascism is part of it too, and that's who pays the bills for them. That's who actually finances this. When we talk about the petrol industry, or we talk about the Koch brothers, and you talk about Americans for Prosperity, and you talk about all of this, the Tea Party freaks and everything else, and the information, the attack of your school board. I almost cursed. The attack of your school board crap, right? I mean, this is all to distract you from what's really happening. And what's really happening is that we are becoming a third world country.
We are.
Yeah. And if any of these lunatic freaks get power, like they become the executive of this country, and I'm talking any of them, any of these lying sacks of crap who play into these, conspiracist, memes or whatever you want to call them, then they will start using the military as their own personal goon squad, and that is third world. That is it.
The brown shirts.
Yeah.
We're so close. And
we're very close.
close.
We're very
Man.
close. Listen, we've been, flirting with it for a really long time, like with the Patriot Act with Bush, where they wanted to be able to see who we were talking to and who we were associating with, and people like me went crazy. We went crazy. It was such an invasion of our Fourth Amendment, which was a guarantee to privacy, right? Women have that guarantee to privacy too, misogynists. But okay, so I was talking about our phone records and all that, and under the Patriot Act, in this fervor to beat back terrorism, right? Foreign terrorism. They wanted to spy on us. They did it. They wanted to collect data on us, and we beat it back. We were able to not allow it. Okay, and to shed light on it, to show you what they'd been working on inside of DARPA the whole time, the Illuminati eye and everything else. And it sounded crazy, I admit. But they found another venue to collect data on you, and it's called Facebook. And Bannon was in charge of that. Remember that. Bannon, the Mercers financed it. And they did it through this fake company called Cambridge Analytica. That's not a real place. That wasn't a real thing. And they sucked up all your data, all your, psychological profiling of you, so that they could target certain messages to certain people at certain times to trigger them, to get them to do really strange things, really ugly things. And they have that data. And that's what the Republicans know, and that's why they're so afraid. They're not afraid of Donald Trump. No one's afraid of him. They're afraid of the data.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The first witness for the defense was one of the defendants. Travis McMichael testified that his father told him to grab his gun before chasing Ahmaud Arbery through the neighborhood in what they claim was an effort to make a citizen's arrest under a now repealed Georgia law.
Did you want to stop him and hold him so the police could come and arrest him?
That was my plan, yes, sir.
McMichael said he and his father believed Arbery was a burglar after Arbery had been seen at the construction site of an unfinished home. Cell phone video shows McMichael confronting the unarmed Arbery after a prolonged chase.
This is a life or death situation, and I'm going to have to stop him from doing this, so I shot.
Prosecutors argue there's no evidence justifying the chase or the deadly encounter, and that there was never an attempt to make a citizen's arrest. The homeowner, Larry English, said Arbery never stole anything and that he never asked the McMichaels to take action. Last week, the prosecution also called a county police detective who read a portion of his interview with Greg McMichael hours after the shooting.
He was trapped like a rat. I think he was wanting to flee, and he realized that something, he was not going to get away.
Prosecutors pushed McMichael after he testified about the law enforcement training he received in the Coast Guard.
So you learned as part of your time in the military that you can't force people to speak with you.
That's correct.
You have to let them walk away.
Yes.
Arbery's mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, spoke outside the courthouse.
Travis was on the stand, wiping tears from his eyes. But again, Travis is alive. Can you imagine the tears that we have shared?
I mean, this is unbelievable. There's a chase, right? There's a chase. There's an armed chase. There's a chase going on between this Travis, his daddy, who, by the way, was the investigator for the district attorney's office in Brunswick, which explains everything about why there are no charges filed at all until we, Americans, see the video 2 months later. Because they literally tried to get away with the murder of a 25-year-old jogger. And they almost did. They almost did. But they, listen, the testimony is devastating. The cross-examination of Travis, who should never have put his white butt on the stand, ever. But did, because he wants to claim self-defense. And we all learned our lesson about if you're going to claim that you shot someone in self-defense, you're going to have to take the stand and tell the jury what was so frightening that you shot an unarmed man. It's the same story in the Rittenhouse trial. It's the same story here, okay? And so Travis got his butt on the stand, and the prosecutor tried to make him into some Coast Guard mechanic hero. I was a mechanic in the Air Force. I ain't no hero. He was a mechanic. And somehow he's all of a sudden, law enforcement trained, and he knows everything about law enforcement. Oh, my God, this was just bizarre. Anyway, because they did that, the prosecution gets to cross-examine him, and the prosecution did cross-examine him today. And, Idiot Boy actually admits that Ahmaud Arbery was running away. He was running away. Hence the word chase. Over and over when you report what happened that day. There is no way to report what happened that day without reporting that Ahmaud Arbery ran away and that Travis and his daddy, who were both armed, one with a shotgun, one with a handgun, and their friend Roddy, got in their cars and chased him for a long time, chased him. And then they pinned him in between their cars, and they described it like they created a rat trap, a trap for a rat. And guess what else we found out today during the cross-examination? We found out today during the cross-examination that Travis was talking to some friend of his on Facebook and decided that Ahmaud Arbery was vermin. Can't get more Nazi than vermin. What have I been talking to you about? Tucker does it too. They sit on their TV shows, they sit on their Facebook pages, and they refer to people as filth. They refer to people as vermin. The neo-Nazis do. The fascists do. And that's exactly what we found out Travis was saying about Ahmaud Arbery, even though there were multiple people who went into this unsecured house. It was wide open. It was a house under construction with no doors, no windows. And people would go in there and they would look around. Nothing was ever stolen from that house. Nothing ever untoward happened to the property. Nothing at all. But we all learned a valuable lesson. You can't use deadly force in the protection of property anyway. And you can't assume that Ahmaud Arbery committed a crime if you didn't witness him committing a crime. Chase after him for, 5-10 minutes. Trap him like a rat. And then approach him with your shotgun and claim self-defense. This is so sad. This is so bizarre. This is so sick. And the idea that his daddy worked for the district attorney's office and that they rigged it so that charges would never be filed against these yahoos in the murder of a 25-year-old kid who was simply jogging and went into that house, by the way, to get a drink of water, a cool drink of water. Then bam! This is sick. And that the jury selection, right there, you understood what the culture, let's say, the temperature was in this particular town in Brunswick, Georgia. We all understood what what day it was. This is so sad. It's so sick, okay? And, on cross-examination, Travis actually was saying, oh, yeah, he was running away and we were chasing him.
At this point in time, when you first see him on Burford, he's not reaching into his pockets.
No, ma'am. Not running, no, ma'am.
And he never yelled at you guys?
No, ma'am.
Never threatened you at all?
No, ma'am.
Never brandished any weapons?
Sorry, are you trying to finish his answer?
Yeah, he did not threaten me verbally, no, ma'am.
All right. Didn't brandish any weapons?
No, ma'am.
Didn't pull out any guns?
No, ma'am.
Didn't pull out any knife?
No, ma'am.
Never reached for anything, did he?
No.
He just ran.
He just ran.
Yes, he was just running.
Yes, he was just running. Running away. He was just running. He just ran away. That's all he did. Run away. Run away. And we chased him. And we chased him good. And then he had the nerve yesterday when his defense attorney was questioning him, he had the nerve to beat back his tears and say that 25-year-old unarmed Ahmaud Arbery, who did absolutely nothing, frightened him. He was scared. He was scared of Ahmaud Arbery, and he had to shoot him. He had to. He had to shoot him.
You have moved out in the road. You've aimed this shotgun at Mr. Arbery.
I did.
Mr. Arbery goes to the passenger side of the truck.
Yes.
Okay? Your dad is still yelling at him because we can hear him go, "Stop, goddammit, stop," right?
Yes.
You could have easily just stepped back to your pickup truck and watched him keep going, right?
I could have, yes, but I still didn't know what he could have done right there where I couldn't see him. And to get closer to the pickup, to get closer to Dad, to get to the truck, if he's going to try to come to the truck, I will be right there. So I was thinking that he was a threat, that he might go after myself, my father, or the truck.
So you're telling this jury that a man who has spent 5 minutes running away from you, you're now thinking is somehow going to want to continue to engage with you, someone with a shotgun, and your father, a man who's just said, "Stop all blood."
It's Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
In your statement to Detective Nohilly, only a couple hours after the homicide of Ahmaud Arbery, you basically say he goes around the corner, comes back, he's, man, something's not right here. I tell him to stop, grab the gun out of the truck. I say, hey, stop. He runs back. Man, you call 911 yet? Find my phone, give it to my dad, said, call the cops, let's get the cops. So it's only after you grabbed your shotgun out of the truck at the corner of Holmes and Satilla that you say, hey, let's call the cops, and you hand the phone to your dad to call the cops.
That's when I found out that he did not call the police, when I realized that he has not called the police.
You never indicated that Mr. Arbery actually stopped long enough for you to have a conversation with him. Is that correct, at the top of page 9?
Yes, I do. I said, he's running, he won't stop. I said, that's him. Stop right there. Stop where you're at. Call the cops, And I'm assuming, or what I'm saying there is, I told him that I called the cops. There he is. He starts acting funny, and then he takes off running. So he was stopped. If he takes off running, then he was stopped at the point.
You remember yesterday telling this jury that that's what you said to your dad? Call the cops, there he is? Do you remember telling this jury just yesterday that was what you said to your dad? Call the cops. There he is. He starts acting funny. He takes off running.
I believe I said, have you called the cops yet? And then on this here is what I mentioned to the police in the interview. And reading this and knowing how I was all over the place when I was giving that statement, this is what I was talking about. This is what I believe is what I was talking about.
But you'd agree, nowhere in here do you say that Mr. Arbery actually stopped. You said, stop right there, stop right where you're at, and he takes off running.
He takes off running.
Mm-hmm.
You can't claim self-defense if somebody is running away from you. You can't say, I was frightened by him, if somebody is running away from you. If you get in your car and you chase somebody with your car after you've grabbed your shotgun and you don't call the police, which he did not do, and then you trap that person like a rat, your words, not mine. Vermin is a very big recurring theme in this man's life, right? He's Facebooking with his friend way before this ever happens, telling his friend, I need to make an example out of him. I need to catch the vermin. And then they trap him. They trap the jogger who runs. That's what jogging is. And they get in their car and they chase him, and he's running away from them, and then they trap him with their cars, plural, and then he runs around their cars to try and get away from them, and they shoot him 3 times with a shotgun at close range and have the temerity now to say self-defense. What in the world is going on in the 21st century, even in the South? How in the world do people think that this is okay, let alone that they do get away with it? That they do get away with it. People get away with this crap. And you know how they get away with this crap? Their daddy works for the DA. Or their mom is the DA. Or their mom is a police officer. Or their dad is a police officer. Or it's like, don't worry, son, we got you. Holy crap. And innocent people who are just out jogging to stay in shape, to keep themselves healthy, end up blown to bits with a shotgun. And of course, his argument, Travis's argument is, well, I was scared. And, you know, we were face to face. Yes, you were face to face because you chased him down and trapped him with Roddy's car and your truck. That's how you got face to face with him. And now he's saying, oh, well, we were face to face and I had to shoot him. I had to. Okay, he literally says in a police report, in an interview with the police after the fact, he says, oh, Ahmed grabbed my gun. He grabbed my gun. And then the prosecutor asks, what do you mean he grabbed your gun? How is that possible that he grabbed your gun? Well, I can't remember if he actually grabbed my gun.
Detective Nohilly specifically asked you, do you remember if he grabbed the shotgun at all? And your response was, I want to say he did, but honestly, I cannot remember. I mean, me and him were face to face the entire time. Do you remember saying that?
Yes, and I was trying to think of that exact moment. Trying to give him, trying to give him as much detail as possible under the stress and all this going on. It was obvious that...
Oh, you were stressed.
He had the gun, from what I was saying in here, to reread it, that he had the weapon the way that I was describing it. But why I said he did not have the gun at that second, I don't know why. But yeah, I mean, that's what I said. I want to say he did, but I honestly cannot remember.
I cannot remember if he grabbed the gun. That is a horrible response to give when the whole premise of your defense is self-defense.
This is such bullcrap. And you know what's really amazing is that he took the stand, that he believed he could lie like this, that he believed not just that he could withstand cross-examination, but that he was prepared to lie like that he has had it in his head. Put me on the stand, put me on the stand. I will say he grabbed my gun. I will say that he wouldn't stop and I had every right to stop him. I will say that I was afraid of him. I will say whatever I have to say. I will. But the evidence isn't there. Okay, none of the video shows anything even remotely close to his lie. But the idea that these good old boys, that these down south Brunswick, Georgia boys feel that it is their right to take a life and get away with it if that life is a young black man's life. This is sick and sad. And by the way, you know that this is a very hostile courtroom to African-American residents who live there because you already have Roddy's lawyer standing up and objecting to black pastors. You already have lawyers standing up and objecting to, Jesse Jackson, who wasn't even in the courtroom. He just confused Al Sharpton with Jesse Jackson, and that actually made Jesse Jackson want to be there. And Jesse Jackson then went to the courtroom. And today, 100 black pastors went to Brunswick, Georgia for a prayer vigil. None of that would happen except that these good old boys and their good old boy attorneys create hostile environments and lie like crazy. They lie in open court. They lie to the judge. They lie under oath. They lie during their question. I mean, It is so horrendous. You know, we want to believe we live in the 21st century. We want to believe it's so bad. But you know we don't. We can't even teach history. We can't.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
You testified yesterday that you had been trained in the military for the Coast Guard, that even when you had arrest powers, before you could arrest somebody, you needed probable cause, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And you even gave the jury the definition of probable cause, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You said it was a level of suspicion by a reasonable and prudent person, given the overall circumstances, to believe a crime has been committed.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. But that's really only half the definition, isn't it?
That's what I was taught in my training. Is that definition right there?
So, isn't it correct that? Well, let me ask it this way: didn't you learn from your training that you need two parts?
Reasonable suspicion first, and then probable cause.
So, isn't it true from your training that you need two parts of probable cause? You need probable cause that a crime has actually been committed, and that the person you're arresting is the one who committed the crime.
That would be correct.
All right. But you left out the second part, that you actually have to have probable cause that the person you're arresting is actually the one committing the crime.
That makes sense. That was the person that I assumed that was committing the crime. That was the probable cause was him.
She got the word assumed. That's what she wanted out of that. He didn't see any crime being committed because guess what? No crime was committed. So he assumed, and that was her opening statement. Her opening statement was, based on assumptions, these three men went out and murdered somebody. Based on their assumptions, they didn't witness any crime because no crime had been committed. They didn't have any reason to fear for their lives because the person they were screaming at and chasing was running away from them. All they had to do was call the police, which they lied to the police and said they did. They didn't. They never called the police. They decided they were going to clean up their neighborhood and clean it out of the vermin. The vermin, which is what Travis, was writing on his Facebook page to his friend.
She said, we've had a lot of trouble with thieves. It just worries me because my daddy is slap old crazy, LOL. He's old as dirt and doesn't care about jail. And you responded, that's what this world needs more of. My old man is the same way.
I did say that, yes, ma'am.
And then the next line is, you said, hell, I'm getting that way.
I did say that.
She said, have to make an example out of somebody. You said, that's right. Hope y'all catch the vermin, correct?
I did.
Now, you know what's interesting about that? Not just that he refers to human beings as vermin, okay, and that he has like self-deputized, and that he is willing to kill somebody over something that didn't even happen. There was no crime committed at all. In fact, the owner of the house, Mr. English, testified that nothing was ever taken from that house, nothing. But that he actually has premeditation because he's sitting on his Facebook talking to a friend and telling his friend that he's going to clean up the vermin, that he's becoming just like his old man. And his old man, who he depicts as being crazy and willing to kill people, okay, is a former police officer in that town and ends up being the investigator for the district attorney's office. A crazy son of a bitch is in charge of investigations for the district attorney, for the prosecution in that town. Do you understand how much crime was, charged against people who didn't do anything in that town? Do you understand what that is implying? But you know what's really interesting about this exchange? You have no idea how hard she had to work to get that exchange going, because at first, when she asked him about this vermin comment, he said, I don't think I ever said that. And she had to go over to his attorney's table and show his attorney the date and time of the Facebook page when he posted this, because now she has premeditation, by the way, but had to go over to the attorney and say, oh, yeah, no, your client really did do this. Don't tell me you're that bad of a lawyer that you didn't know that your client was referring to Ahmaud Arbery and other people in this town who don't look like him as vermin. Please don't tell me you're that bad of counsel. I mean, we all know that you stand up and you object to black pastors. We get who you are. But don't tell me you're that bad at your job. Don't tell me you suck that hard. Now, if I were his attorney, not that I would take this case, but if I were his attorney, I would have said, you can't introduce that because he just said he didn't write it, and you have no way of knowing who was sitting at his keyboard when that was written. You can't verify that it was actually Travis sitting there typing the word vermin, can you? I would argue chain of custody. How did you get this? Do you know what I'm saying? But his attorneys are so bad. They just want to, throw themselves on the mercy of a white jury. And that's all that's going on in that courtroom. That's all they're relying on is an all-white jury. Sharon in New York.
Hi, Randy. Love your show. Former Canarsie girl.
Oh, hey, I hear the accent. You sound just like me.
I do sound just like you. Love watching you.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like I'm watching a Harper Lee movie/novel.
Yeah.
And what I don't understand, they say, okay, we know it's all crap anyway, but he's there stealing something. The guy's jogging. He's got no car, no bag,
no
means of
backpack,
getting anything, nothing,
right.
Nothing. So where is this coming from? I mean, I think we know. It's kind of obvious.
Yeah. I mean, she actually said, did he have a backpack? Did he have a bag in his hand? Did he have anything at all? Or was he just wearing a T-shirt and some jogging shorts and sneakers? Do you know what I mean? That's what I said the other day. I mean, this is crazy. So if you were going to rob a construction, site, right? And it was a house that was being built. And let's say you had this idea, I'm going to steal the granite, or I'm going to steal the faucets, or I'm going to steal...
Right.
Why would you go on foot? No, you would bring...
And you're not going to fit it in your pocket.
That's exactly the point. You can't steal anything from a construction zone and put it in your pocket. Okay? You can't even steal the copper wire and put it in your pocket. This is fantastical. Right. This is bizarro world. But they are willing to say and do anything to let them have the ability to kill who they want to.
My hope is it does not turn out like To Kill a Mockingbird and we see some kind of justice, because there's no hope left for this country.
Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, this is the olden days, right? You think that you live in the 21st century. You think that, we've had Brown versus Board. You think that we've had... separate is not equal. You think that we've gone down a bad road, but have bent the arc of, bent the arc towards justice? No. It's bending back. Why? Because we had a demagogue as president and told people there's no shame in being a racist. You could do it.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I couldn't believe how McMichael seemed to be the first aggressor, the second aggressor, and the third aggressor.
Hello.
It really is a stark comparison to what we saw in the Rittenhouse case, because you have McMichael admitting that he's suspicious of somebody in his neighborhood, because there's some testimony that this guy was from the other side of the neighborhood, kind of thinly veiled there. And then
other side, wink, wink, I hear you.
Then he begins chasing the young man in his truck, and he's kind of pulled up alongside of him. What was the testimony? Arbery turned around and ran in the other direction, and McMichael throws it in reverse and begins chasing him in reverse in his truck. Arbery runs in a third direction. McMichael chases him. Ultimately, McMichael gets out of his truck with his shotgun, and he is the aggressor throughout the incident. It really is, it's pretty clear that even under friendly questioning from his own defense attorney, he did not paint a very compelling picture in support of self-defense.
There is no self-defense claim that can be made here. When somebody is running away from you, you cannot claim self-defense. When you don't have to, listen, you get in your car, you want to follow somebody because you think that they may have committed a crime. Okay, I even have problems with that. I don't understand why you just don't call the police and let them handle it, okay? But okay, let's just say Travis was so outraged at the perception that somebody was soiling his lily white neighborhood with their black ass. Running with a black ass means crime. Criminal activity is afoot. Criminal behavior must be. Blacks don't take care of their physicality. They don't jog. They're not healthy people. They're vermin. Okay. So he gets in his truck, right? He gets in his truck, but he grabs his shotgun first. Then he gets in his truck with his daddy in the back of the truck, in the flatbed portion of his pickup. And daddy's got a gun too. And then they chase this guy who's running away from them, And their friend, Roddy, also gets in his car. And they hunt this dude. They hunt him and trap him like he was an animal. And they trap him between their cars where he can't get away from them. They jump out of their cars. He's got a shotgun. He points it at this kid, face to face, points it at this kid. Oh, well, this kid apparently had the temerity to try and swat the gun away to preserve his own damn life. He's acting in his own self-defense, and that becomes the casus belli. That becomes the reason why you have to shoot him. No, I don't care what town you're in. I don't care how deep in the South this is. Once there's cameras in the courtroom, which must happen, it must happen in every single trial. It must happen. And you can see the lying and you can feel the lying, and videotape, thank God, can show that you're lying. Then you must go to jail for the rest of your life for hunting a human being. It's blood sport down there. You understand that? It's blood sport. And the only difference between the 21st century and the 20th is video. That is it. That is the only thing that has changed. People's attitudes haven't evolved. People's understanding of each other haven't evolved. And any chance of evolution that we had was set back, 50 years by having a racist, spewing president. A president who spewed hatred and not only, encouraged violence, but really embraced it as a way to solve problems. Oh, punch him in the face. Get him out of here. Go home to your mama, right? All of this hostility, all of this violence, all of this, encouragement of being violent and telling people, go down there and kick some ass, right? Today's the day we take down names and kick some ass. This entire party has set us back to like pre-1950s, okay? We're talking about, strange fruit again. We're talking about lynchings. That is the word everybody's groping for right this minute. What was that, Randy? What was that? That was a freaking lynching, okay? It was a fun day for them. That was a hunt. That was something they had fun doing, and they felt that they could get away with it because they were connected to law enforcement. The daddy was connected to the district attorney who would have to bring the charges, and she didn't. She didn't. And it wasn't until the videotape. It wasn't until Americans of good nature and sound reasonable mind saw that videotape that we said, holy crap, we just watched a lynching. Somebody has got to pay for Ahmaud Arbery's murder. And people of good faith in this country made a big stink. And if we didn't make a big stink about it, if we didn't make a big stink about George Floyd, if we let another Eric Garner happen, which was also on videotape, if we let it happen again and again and again after we were seeing it, and we were seeing it over and over and over again, it would have darkened our souls. We would have gone down that well, that deep, dark, dank well with them. And we weren't about to do that. We weren't about to trade our souls for theirs. Because these are some dark-hearted, nasty, ugly, evil, violent haters. These are some really gross people that have been given new life by a president who understood that they could be triggered. All he had to do was give them permission, and they would go right off the rails. And they would, and of course, the whole idea of it, like, why? Why is it a useful tool to have us doing this to each other? Why is it useful to have racism, percolating through the society yet again? Why is it useful to politicians to have one American set upon another American? Why is it useful to portray America as two separate nations? Because that creates chaos. Donald Trump, as you know, was a chaos candidate and a chaos president. Why? Why do they believe in chaos? Because in chaos you can steal. In chaos you could take away rights. In chaos you can get people screaming and clamoring for a heavy-handed response to anything and everything that people feel threatened by. You can get vigilantism to the fore. You can make people kill and hurt and maim and threaten other people. And that was a useful tool for them so that they could then transfer $2 trillion of middle-class taxes to the very rich. And that was just the beginning. And trust me, if another one of these lunatic, fringy people gets power as the president of the United States, the military is going to become their goon squad, just like it does in every third world nation. The inequality is a harbinger of things to come if they get anywhere near any kind of power ever again. Do not buy into their theory that they're going to take over again in 2022. This is not true. This is bullcrap. Everybody understands that guys like Paul Gosar should never be near any sort of decision-making power. Everybody understands violent videos beget more violence. Everybody understands that having a sitting member of the House of Representatives, whether it be Mo Brooks or Andy Biggs, also from Arizona, or Paul Gosar, also from Arizona, spewing this kind of, imagery or illusion that you could get away with killing another member of the House, or you could get away with killing anybody, killing at all, that would be something you would want to reach. By the way, I have to tell you, I'm sure you know by now. I don't want to, repeat what everyone else tells you, because I know that even casual viewers of news understand that after Paul Gosar was censured yesterday, like minutes after he was censured, he retweeted the same damn violent video, the anime. These people have it in their head that they could get half of America to kill the other half in service of their desire to steal. And I mean real money, big money, trillions, billions. It's their MO.
Mary had a little lamb. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Today, we're critiquing Paul Gosar's anime. Next week, we might be indicting the Wile E. Coyote for an explosive ordinance against the Roadrunner.
For Democrats, this vote isn't about a video, it's about control.
I lived in Japan for several years. I speak Japanese. I read and write Japanese.
What does that have to do with anything?
This is an anime.
An anime?
It is Shingeki no Kyojin.
Oh my God.
Highly popular, stylized, intended to demonstrate the alienation people feel.
They don't like freedom. You can see it. They don't like it. This is wrong.
The left has nothing else to do but troll the internet looking for ways to get offended.
America is dissolving under our feet, and Democrats are worried about cartoons.
We're worried about cartoons who serve as Congress members. That's what we're worried about. We're worried about crazy people who threaten the lives of their colleagues. You know, okay, here's what you have to do if you think Paul Gosar simply tweeted anime. Andy Biggs lived in Japan. Andy Biggs reads and writes Japanese. What does that have to do with threatening the life of a colleague? So if you're at work and let's say your Facebook postings or you used your Twitter and you took a cartoon character or any character, let's say you took, a character from a video game you play, a first-person shooting video game that you play, and you imposed your colleague's face on the character you were shooting at and killing for points, right, in your video game, and you posted that even in the kitchen of your workplace. You didn't even put it on social media, let's say. You just put it in the bathroom, or you put it in the kitchen, you put it on your lunch, because you didn't want that person to touch your lunch. And that person always touches your lunch. And you're not having another day where you go to get your lunch and they pilfered your lunch. You'd get fired for threatening the life of your colleague. Okay? You would get fired. This is not acceptable behavior in any workplace that any of us toil in. It is not acceptable in any corporate environment. It isn't acceptable anywhere where people work. And yet, if you threaten the life of a member of Congress who is your colleague in a place where they literally have rules, they have rules that say you can't even insult a colleague on the floor of the House when you're making your impassioned plea to vote yes or no on a piece of legislation. When you're having a debate, you're not allowed to denigrate people you work with in Congress. You're not allowed to trash them or insult them or call them names or, accuse them of crimes. You're not allowed to do that. That's how high a standard Congress had set for itself with regard to respect for colleagues. But Gosar gets defended by his colleagues after he threatens the life of AOC by putting her face as a monster in an anime video. He puts her face on the monster in this anime video, and then he also puts Joe Biden's face as a monster and slashes Joe Biden up with a sword as he is the hero in his imaginary world, right? And they censure him. Ooh, oh my God, they censured him. They censured him, which we all witnessed yesterday was nothing but a vote to denounce what you did as being inappropriate and unethical and not comporting with the rules of the House. That will get you a censure. And then the punishment is the Speaker of the House reads out loud that you've been censured while you stand in the well of the House and listen to her for 2 minutes, not even a minute, less than a minute, say you've been censured and slams the gavel down and removes you from your committee. Ooh. And this has the Republicans' panties in a bunch to the point where they're saying this is about control and this is about, they don't like freedom. And are you kidding me? This would get anybody fired in any other situation, but there is no firing here. Paul Gosar hasn't been expelled from the House. Paul Gosar hasn't lost pay. Paul Gosar isn't going to be docked or given a timeout even. No, Paul Gosar is done. His punishment, that was it. You saw it yesterday. It lasted less than 30 seconds. That's it. And they are screaming, we will retaliate. We will retaliate. We will pull Democrats off of their committees when we take control of the House, because they only see their governing as being nothing but retaliation, nothing but investigation, nothing but hatred, nothing but vitriol, because they can't govern. You know that. They have no policies that, would benefit you, your family, your children, your grandma, your mother, your father. They couldn't care less, okay? They don't want to raise the minimum wage, and they certainly don't care about collective bargaining and giving us some leverage, and they certainly don't care about our health or well-being. They certainly don't care about our ability to vote freely, right? They gerrymander the hell out of, any place where we might have a chance of representation because we've decided to create a community that represents our values. Well, we're just going to take a pencil and we're going to draw a line in the middle and betwixt your community so that you are diluted in your power as a citizen, right? They couldn't care less. So all they do is talk strong and wrong. That's them. That's who they are. So now they're screaming about retaliation, okay? Nancy Pelosi was asked about retaliation, and her response was they should be nowhere near leadership. They should be nowhere near a gavel, okay? They should not ever have power. These people are bizarre, right?
Are you at all comfortable with the likelihood that if Republicans take the majority, they may retaliate against Democrats to remove them from their committees for any perceived or even serious offense that may happen?
Is the inference that I draw from your question that we should have not censured Mr. Gosar for his shameful behavior for fear of something the Republicans might do in the unlikely case that they might win the Congress? Even if they do, we can't, I don't expect that that's the case, and I'm doing everything in my power to make sure it isn't. Not just because of Gosar, but because of our democracy, which they are undermining every single day. And you see their behavior on the floor says they shouldn't have a gavel be anywhere near them, ever.
Well, that's true enough. But here's the real story. The Republicans want you and me and other Republicans and other Democrats and other independents to believe that had we not censured Paul Gosar for threatening the lives of the President of the United States, which we all know you can't do, and threatening the life of a colleague, which we all know you can't do, had we not called him out on his really piss-poor behavior and his disgusting nature, had we not shamed him for all of 30 seconds, the Republicans would never, ever retaliate against the Democrats once they had power again. Really? Does anybody believe that? Because these are the people that organized an insurrection and tried to overthrow our government. Really? Do you think that if we only didn't censure Paul Gosar, we could have sang Kumbaya together when, they envisioned they would get the majority of the House back? And Kevin McCarthy, who knows what happened that day, who refuses to speak out about that violence, if we let him be the Speaker of the House and we hadn't censured Gosar, it would all be Kumbaya?
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Democrat policies are so pathetic and have done so poorly that the left has nothing else to do but troll the internet looking for ways to get offended and then try to target members and strip them of their committees. This is a dumb waste of the House's time. But since the Speaker has designated the floor to discuss members' inappropriate actions, shall we? The Jihad Squad member from Minnesota has paid her husband, and not her brother husband, the other one, over $1 million in campaign funds. This member is allowed on the Foreign Affairs Committee while praising terrorists. A Democrat chairwoman incited further violence in the streets outside of a courthouse. And then the cherry on top. My colleague and 3-month presidential candidate from California, who is on the Intelligence Committee, slept with Fang Fang, a Chinese spy. Let me say that again. A member of Congress who receives classified briefings was sleeping with the enemy. This is unacceptable, and this would never be...
Time's expired. Gentleman from Florida.
She is bat crap, that girl. If any of that was true, then those people would be brought up on charges. You know, the Democrats have no problem censuring our own members. The last person who was censured was Charlie Rangel. His big crime, he fundraised on his own congressional stationery. And that got him censured 10 years ago. Charlie Rangel, okay? The only person that has been expelled in modern times, let's say since the Civil War, where we had 2 members who were expelled for treason, is James Traficant, that psycho Democrat from Ohio. Okay, he was caught committing fraud, and it was a felony, and we expelled him. We expelled our own fraudulent member. They've got plenty of frauds, plenty, including Miss Boebert. Here's her rap sheet.
Learn to develop conservative and Christian values.
Disorderly conduct, arrested. Lewd exposure, arrested. Outstanding warrant, arrested. Domestic violence, arrested. Careless driving, failure to appear. Garnishment of wages, failed to appear. Careless driving, failed to appear. Foreclosure judgment. Multiple seatbelt violations, and the Boebert family rap sheet. This is the pillar of virtue who preaches to us. She's got quite an arrest record, that Lauren Boebert does. Quite an arrest record in multiple states, by the way. If you noticed, some of those offenses were, in Colorado. Other offenses were in different states. Oh, my God. Matt Gaetz, who is under investigation for Venmoing underage prostitute. He's under investigation for trafficking, for human trafficking, with a minor involved. Here's what he had to say last night on Newsmax about good old Kyle Rittenhouse.
We watched as these BLM and Antifa rioters burned our cities, brought bloodshed to our neighborhoods, threatened our fellow Americans. It was terrorizing. And, this QAnon shaman is like a relatively harmless, nonviolent vegan. And the notion that he's got to be in prison for 3.5 years to settle some sort of political score defies justice. The American people deserve a Department of Justice that is the least political agency in Washington. And instead, what we've got is a Department of Justice that is the most political agency in Washington, becoming essentially the enforcement wing of the Democratic Party. Now what we see is abject threat construction. They want the American people to believe that anyone who is not totally on board with the disastrous Biden regime is somehow a domestic terrorist, whether it's the school board parents getting flagged by the Department of Justice or people who didn't commit any violence on January 6th, but are somehow this ongoing threat.
Oh, I have 2 words for you, Matt Gaetz. Bill Barr. Talk about the politicization of the Justice Department. Bill Barr. Okay. Jeffrey Clark, who wrote, John Eastman. a memo saying how to overturn the results of a free and fair election, how to overthrow your government, a coup memo. But this is what he said. This is the conversation that really stood the back of the hair on my neck up last night. I mean, I literally don't think anybody watches this channel. I really don't. But this.
Thank you for your advocacy for Kyle Rittenhouse. He is not guilty. He deserves a not guilty verdict, and I sure hope he gets it, because you know what? Kyle Rittenhouse would probably make a pretty good congressional intern. We may reach out to him and see if he'd be interested in helping the country in additional ways.
All right, so maybe we'll have to fight for him. I want him here at Newsmax. Maybe he could be a Stinchfield intern, too. He'll have all kinds of jobs.
You guys pay way better at Newsmax, but there's nothing like the Hill.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. A 17-year-old with an illegal AR-15 who ends up killing 2 people and blowing the arm off of a third, who is on trial right now for his life, is being considered in public on Newsmax by Matt Gaetz and that host at Newsmax for employment as a congressional intern and or a Newsmax host.
That is so disgusting. The only thing they know about him truly is his capacity for murder, and that makes him eligible for positions within,
and that he lies, and that he's willing to lie. He lied about being an EMT to everybody that was down in Kenosha that night. He lied about being asked to guard this auto source place. He was never asked to do any of that. He lied about the gun. He lied about, having a gun pointed at him. He lied about, listen, here's the thing. When Rosenbaum was charging at little Kyle Rittenhouse, you know what Kyle had in his hand? Do you know? So his gun was strapped to his person. Remember, he bought the strap that day. But Kyle had a fire extinguisher in his hand, which was the point of a whole line of questioning about why was he running from the 60th Street Auto Source to the 63rd Street Auto Source. And he said it was because they had called him, they being the other militia members that were at the 63rd. These are all militia members, okay? Strapped militia members. They called him and they said, we have a fire here. You have to come put out the fire. So he grabs a fire extinguisher. He's running to the other auto. So he has a fire extinguisher in his hand. Okay, Rosenbaum is unarmed and he feels threatened by him. Throw the fire extinguisher at him or spray him with it. Why do you have to blow him away? Why do you have to shoot him 4 freaking times, Kyle? Because you're a lily-livered coward. And you have no real training. What you have are 2 weapons. You got a fire extinguisher that won't kill him, and you've got your AR, and you shoot him 4 times. First time, he's already pulverized. Shoot him 3 more times on the way down. Look, that's all they know about Kyle Rittenhouse is that he's willing to lie, that he's a great BS artist. That's what they know. And that makes him their hero. To the point where Matt Gaetz, who's under investigation, says he'll hire him to work in Congress. Yeah, good.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. Oh, here's Steve Bannon threatening everybody.
They don't know how to handle when MAGA punches back, and MAGA's punching back. Okay, we're not going to just sit here and take it anymore. After months and months and months and months and months of just their rhetoric and trying to weaponize the law and weaponize DOJ, we're not going to take it, okay? We're going on offense. I'm going to bring in Raheem in this morning, but 2 massive pieces of news overnight, in addition to the surrender to the Chinese Communist Party by the illegitimate Biden regime, whose son has been both honeypotted by the Chinese Communist Party and compromised. The whole family's compromised by their money, which is outrageous, and which will be a massive investigation as soon as we take back the House. And to show you how they know they're going to be in the minority. Hey, we're going to rub your nose. We're going to rub their noses publicly in the malfeasance that their lives are. Okay, the communists. And by the way, little Jamie Raskin, your father, the whole thing about being a communist traitor. Okay, a Marxist traitor. We're going to get into all of that. Okay, we're going to get into every detail of how you guys have comported yourself as enemies of the United States of America. Okay, enemies of the United States of America. Gloves are off. Okay, we're going all in on this thing, and we got so many patriots aligned with us. Let's go back to This is the war that they have brought to us, and we're going to fight it every day, and we don't care what shifty shift, and we don't care what the Marxist, from his Marxist traitor father, little Jamie Raskin, and the Farrakhan mouthpiece, Benny Thompson.
Okay, this is really sick and twisted because, you know, Matt Getz, who I just played you, saying he would hire Kyle Rittenhouse to work in the Congress with him. Newsmax, who said, you know, they would hire Kyle Rittenhouse. And the only thing they know about Kyle Rittenhouse is he is capable of lying and murder. And now there's Bannon, who is facing, you know, I mean, maximum 2 years in prison for being held in contempt of Congress. For not showing up. Any privilege he wanted to invoke, he could. If he just showed up and invoked it, that would have been, you know, above board. It would have been correct. It would have been law-abiding to do that. But he chose not to show up. And they are behaving as if we are a lawless third world country where if you're connected to the right people, just like in Brunswick, Georgia, you see there's a theme here. You don't have to face the bar of justice. You can do whatever you want. Same with Gosar. You know, the reason why they rally around Paul Gosar is because they want to send a message to guys like Gosar who, you know, obviously learned his lesson yesterday after being shamed in the well of the House. Ooh, he was shamed. He retweeted the video right away, right? And his Republican colleagues all went and defended that because they want to send a message. You could do whatever you want to do to anybody you want to do it. Now, Bannon is sitting there calling Jamie Raskin's father a communist, a Marxist. Pick one. A Leninist, a Stalinist, pick one, right? But I want you to know Jamie Raskin's dad, he was a Vietnam protester. That's what he's getting at. He protested a war that was so unpopular that we ended it. I just strong and wrong. That's who they are. And these men that I just mentioned, the Gosars, the Bannons, the Getz, they're all under investigation. Okay. Also, Gosar was part of the insurrection. Biggs, part of the insurrection. Bannon, all hell's going to break loose tomorrow, but it's not going to happen the way you think it. They were part of an attempt to overthrow our government, and they're standing on the rock of patriotism. How do people get there in their heads? How do people literally think that a guy who organized a bunch of miscreants, over 675 people have been prosecuted already for an attempt at overthrowing our government? Steve Bannon obviously was part of the planning and the execution of that attempted coup. And they're standing on the rock of patriotism. These are people who never served a day in their life in service to this nation. Now, if Steve Bannon is such a patriot, hold yourself out for public office. Go ahead, run for election, Steve. Because I think that the planning and the plotting to overthrow this here government, this here nation of laws isn't going to serve you well. And I mean, why are you satisfied with being, I don't know, the second most popular podcaster on Getter instead of being the president of the United States of America? Why are you happy in the cheap seats, Steve? Threatening everybody, I'm going to... the vitriol, the retaliation, as if we just didn't investigate the coup, if we just didn't hold anybody accountable for trying to overthrow our government, they wouldn't retaliate against us. Right. What world are we supposed to be living in? This is crazy. This is mass madness. You maniacs, you. Sitting on his show, threatening everybody. Oh, and here's Donald Trump. Why is he wearing a tuxedo? I have no earthly idea. But here's Donald Trump with Mike Lindell.
We know what happened.
Right.
You see it in the reports. You see it in everything. And also, they're so guarding it, they don't want to give the votes. They don't want to give the ballots. Mail-in ballots are a disaster. They basically use COVID-19 or the China virus to rig the election, and it's a shame.
Yep.
And I hope the Republicans get tougher. Mitch McConnell's a disaster. The guy's a disaster, the old crow.
The old crow.
He should have never approved that. He should have never allowed. And it was very sad when Mike Pence gave those votes over, because when you have more votes than you have voters, when you have other things that are so wrong, and that was then. Now, since then, many other things have happened which showed that you were right and I was right, and people were right that were looking at it. It's a very sad thing.
You realize he said nothing there. He's implied again, and this was yesterday, the day before. He sat there in a tuxedo with Mike Lindell at Mar-a-Lago, that's where that was, implying that the election was stolen and saying absolutely nothing, providing no evidence of any wrongdoing at all. But what we actually have, is him on tape, threatening Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, with him using the Justice Department, should he prevail, against Brad Raffensperger and his lawyer, Mr. German, whose name he liked. Are you sure you want to do this? Because you're taking a really big risk. He's literally using mob language to threaten them with, if I prevail, if I can overturn this election, if I can hang on to the presidency, I'm going to retaliate against you. It's curtains for you, baby. Curtains. Honestly, and we have him on tape saying, I just need one more vote than Joe Biden got. Can't you just find me one more vote? Can't you just do that? And he's sitting there in a why a tuxedo? I have no earthly idea. Saying nothing evidentiary, saying nothing about any specific thing that he can point to. First of all, there were no more voters than there were ballots. That's just, that was the only thing he offered as a thing. That thing is not true. And then no other thing.
Clear. This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, I want you to listen to this.
In a massive correction, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says it underestimated job growth for most of this year, including 4 months this summer. Initial reports missed job gains from June to September by a cumulative 626,000 jobs. According to the Washington Post, that's the largest underestimation of any other comparable period going back to 1979.
Oh, my God. The Bureau of Labor Statistics missed what would have been a blockbuster jobs report all on its own, but they missed an additional 626,000 jobs created in the economy in September. And when you look at what's going on over there at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you find that it's a Trump appointee who is in charge of the jobs numbers. Yeah, it's a Trump appointee. And, the Trump appointee that actually does the jobs numbers overestimated Donald Trump's jobs numbers by 929,000 jobs when Donald Trump was in office. Overestimated. Said that the economy had created 929,000 jobs when it didn't. This time, Biden's president, and he underestimates 626,000 jobs that the economy created in September. And you remember in September, the jobs news was really bad. Everybody was like, wow, we really missed the mark on that one. Everybody thought it was going to be, a banner month. I mean, we were adding jobs. And then all of a sudden we had this very disappointing month in September. What is going on? It just, it made no sense. I remember Christine Romans was saying maybe people need childcare because September's numbers were so, disappointing.
COVID essentially broke the jobs market, and fixing it won't be quick or simple. That latest evidence is that hiring slowed in September, a setback as the Delta variant rages through the American economy. It is still a pandemic jobs market. 194,000 jobs added back last month. John, as you know, well below very strong hiring seen earlier in the summer. The economy is still down 5 million jobs since the pandemic began.
Turns out none of that was true. Turns out that the Bureau of Labor Statistics put out fake, false News. Fake news, everybody, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You know, Donald Trump manipulated the Centers for Disease Control. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because millions of people planned their lives around reports that were coming from the Centers for Disease Control. Businesses plan their lives around the Center for Disease Control when you're in the middle of a pandemic, right? Right. So we know that Donald Trump manipulated the Centers for Disease Control to say, even though the science said that this is a disease that asymptomatic people with no symptoms, can spread. And so everybody needed to get tested. Donald Trump didn't want everybody to get tested. More testing meant worse numbers. He didn't want the numbers. He didn't want them to be bad. He didn't want them to have anything to do with his economy, which wasn't his, it was Obama's. But he wanted nothing to disturb his economy. And so he told the Centers for Disease Control to manipulate the science. And they did. And now the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we find out, they burrowed in there too. Donald Trump put an appointee in there too. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics, millions of people rely on those numbers to plan their lives. Businesses rely on those numbers to plan their hiring, to plan, their future. How much should they buy? How much should they have in the warehouse? How much should they stock up? How much should they stock down? Right? And now we find out that they're manipulating the Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers to make Joe Biden's approval ratings go down. We know he's doing it with the Postal Service, too. We know that Trump appointee that he put into the Postal Service, this guy named Bloom, is trying to privatize with Louis DeJoy the Postal Service. Why? Because he came from an investment firm, Lazard, that made a fortune off of the privatization of the Royal Mail Service over there in the UK. And they see an opportunity to steal. I'm telling you. This is unbelievable. By the way, the economy is doing gangbusters. It's doing freaking fabulously. The supply chain bottlenecks have eased. Why? Because Biden asked the people at the ports, could you just go to 24 hours? Could you just work, around the clock? Could you do something to get the bottlenecks eased? And guess what? It freaking worked.
You have no doubt heard of the supply chain issues that are coming to ruin the holiday season. Empty shelves at the store, shortages of everything from poultry to cars to coffee cups to turkeys. Well, that has to do in part with a backlog of shipping containers at major ports. But you might not have heard that things are actually improving on that front.
No, hadn't heard.
For example, the rate of idle shipping containers at the massive and critical port of Los Angeles is down nearly 30% just since late October, according to the port's own director. That comes after President Joe Biden announced measures focused on relieving those backlogs last month. So that appears to have worked. At least it's gotten better after he did it. That's a good thing because consumer demand right now is strong. Retail giants Target and Walmart both shared strong sales numbers for the third quarter. And the companies are now saying stores will be fully stocked for the holiday shopping season. And the concerns over empty shelves are greatly exaggerated.
Did you hear that? I didn't hear that on the Foe. I didn't hear that on the Max. I didn't hear that on the One America News Network. I didn't hear that anywhere. You know what I heard everywhere that I just named? That Biden sucks and the economy's falling apart and everything. The economy is booming.
An important gut check on the U.S. economy. Inflation fears have been dominating the headlines. It's the downside of the COVID reopening, but a broader look at the economy shows a remarkable recovery. America's factories are humming, consumers are shopping, and paychecks are fatter. Let's connect the dots. First, manufacturing. Industrial output is racing ahead at a nearly 2-year high, back above pre-pandemic levels.
It's quite a
Factory
chart.
output would be even stronger if not for supply chain hiccups. Corporate profits, enviable. The biggest publicly traded companies have fatter profit margins today than before the pandemic. Big companies are managing well through supply chain woes, passing the costs on to their consumers.
Hello.
Over on Wall Street, the Dow is up 17% this year. That is a remarkable performance. The NASDAQ, 23.5%. The S&P 500 up nearly 25%. Since the market crashed in 2020, stock averages have doubled.
It's all been a giant ruse. It's been a lie. There were bottlenecks at the port of Long Beach. They are being remediated as we speak. This idea that Laura Ingraham, that Lala actually does her own food shopping and took a photograph of empty shelves by herself is bullcrap, okay? She doesn't even know what the program U is. She doesn't live in your world. She doesn't live in the real world. She doesn't go to the supermarket. She doesn't go to Publix. She doesn't go to Piggly Wiggly. She doesn't go to Vons. She doesn't go to Boys. She doesn't go to any of them, okay? She doesn't go to Kroger. She has no earthly idea what the inside of a supermarket looks like, okay? So posting these photographs of her empty shelves, it's all a lie. Everything they're saying is a lie. By the way, the reason why gas is over, well, if you live out in California, it's like $5 a gallon. Here, it's $4 a gallon, okay? The reason why? Saudi Arabia is gouging you to make up for the pandemic loss. Just like I told you, corporations are they're betting that you will pay higher prices. And they know you have fatter paychecks. They know that you have all kinds of savings, that your savings accounts have doubled. Did you know that? Savings in this country have doubled.
In some cases. Still, a big challenge for companies, the great worker resignation. Workers have the upper hand.
Hello.
They are quitting their jobs in record numbers for better jobs and better pay.
Ooh.
A record 4.4 million last month jumping ship for a better job. And this has been months
For a
of that
better
trend.
job.
After decades of sluggish wage growth, paychecks are getting fatter, especially for low-wage workers. Wage growth nearly 5%. And it shows in American savings. Americans have an excess $2.3 trillion in savings since the crisis began. Look at this. J.P. Morgan Chase says its median checking account balance 50% higher this summer than the summer of 2019. And we've learned that the summer lull in job creation wasn't as bad as feared. The government revising higher, jobs added back. 626,000 more jobs added from June to September than the government initially reported.
They're fixing the numbers from the inside. You understand? This is unfreaking believable. So believe your own bank account, believe your own paycheck, believe your own experience. When you go to the supermarket and your shelves are not empty, believe your shelves are not empty. Even if Lala Ingraham tells you they are.